Good morning to each of you. This is an exciting morning as well as a historical morning for Herndon Elementary School. We never in our 8 years dreamed to be in a building today where we are looking at folks in the audience that are avid supporters of education, and to add a bit of icing to an already scrumptious cake, we will have the opportunity to bend the ear of the President this morning, and we are very excited. Mr. President, I would like to take the opportunity to have you meet our President, Peter Godden. He's in the audience. Peter, would you stand? Mr. President, Peter Godden. As we begin our program this morning, as the principal of this high-class institution, I am extremely proud to have the President and Secretary Riley with us this morning. Herndon Elementary School has many wonderful things going on, but this, I think, is the greatest of all things that we have accomplished in the years that I have been here. I hope that this morning, as you listen to us discuss some priorities for quality education, you will begin to recommit yourself to supporting education in a way that would be beneficial to all children. We hope that when you leave here, you will continue to support us, but we also wish that everyone in the room today would begin to really put children first. Because if we do that, if we really do that, united as a nation, America will remain the truly strong and productive nation that it is now. It is my pleasure right now to introduce Secretary Riley, who will come at this time to further the program. Thank you, and welcome to Herndon Elementary School.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you all for giving me the honor of being with you for this most important a discussion of the most important thing facing America today, and that is the education of all of our children. The President and I really appreciate Dr. Dominich and our fine principal and all of you here and the other participants for sharing this important time with us. You know, today in America, we are really all bound together in a great mutual effort to give, as Michelle said, every single child a quality education. We have never, as a nation, been confronted with the task of teaching so much to so many, all the while reaching for high standards for every child. We have that here in this school, reaching for high standards, a large school, a very diverse school, but a school of high standards where every child is important. And that's why we're here today to hear from you what you're doing, to share with you what our strategy is to be of help. We see the federal role as one of a partner, a junior partner, not control, not telling you how to teach or any of that, but support. We want to be your helpful junior partner. And I'm delighted to have so many distinguished educators and parents who could join us for this discussion. And it's a pleasure now for me to present them, Mr. President, to you, in addition to Michelle Freeman, the fine principal of this school, Superintendent Dan Dominich, Assistant Principal Jude Isaacson in the red, Reading Specialist Joanne Shackelford, first grade teacher Martha Bell, beside you, PTA President Tracy Lewis, and Marcia Gorski. Marcia is a parent who does a wonderful job working with other immigrant parents here. And I say to all of you that we have with us today a leader who's made education our nation's #1 priority. Please welcome the nation's education president, Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. First of all, let me thank all of you for that warm welcome, and Michelle Freeman, thank you for welcoming me to Herndon Elementary School. All of you know better than I that this is the beginning of a new school year where parents and children are meeting their teachers for the first time, and there's the excitement and anticipation of what everyone hopes will be a very successful year for the children. And insofar as it is, it's a good year for America. I have done everything I knew to do for the last 6 years to try to focus the attention of the American people on the whole question of education, because I think it is one of the big questions which will determine the shape of our children's future and the world in the 21st century. If you think about the other major challenges we face as Americans, reforming Social Security and Medicare so that we baby boomers don't bankrupt the country when we retire, providing quality, affordable health care to all of our people, proving we can preserve and improve the environment as we grow the economy, building one America across all the racial and religious and other lines that separate us, something I've been very involved in the last several weeks, as all of you know, trying to construct a world free of terrorism and more full of peace and prosperity and security and freedom. Every single one of those challenges depends upon our ability to have educated citizens. Not just educated presidents, not just educated secretaries of education, but citizens who can absorb complicated information and all these things that are flying at them all the time and evaluate it and measure it, who can develop reasoned, principled, passionate responses to keep the idea of America going into this new century. So that's why I wanted to come here today. Many of you know that I am leaving. When I go back from you, I go back to Washington, and then the First Lady and I are going to Russia and then to Ireland with a team of people to deal with the issues there. And I'd like to just say one word about it because it's my only real opportunity to talk with you and through you, thanks to our friends in the press here, to the American people. Because this trip is is an example of one of the most important lessons every child needs to learn in America from a very early age, and that is we are living in a smaller and smaller world. This global economy, the global society, it is real. Information, ideas, technology, money, people can travel around the world at speeds unheard of not very long ago. Our economies are increasingly interconnected. Our securities are increasingly interconnected. I'm sure all of you have followed the events in the aftermath of the tragic bombing at our embassies in Africa. And you know that there were far more Africans killed than Americans, even though America was the target. And you know that the person responsible did not belong to any government, but had an independent terrorist network capable of hitting people in countries all around the world. So there's been a lot of good. We've benefited a lot from this global society of ours. We have over 16 million new jobs in the last 6 years. And we're about to have our first balanced budget and surplus in 29 years. We have benefited from the world of the 21st century, but we have a lot of responsibilities. And the reason I'm going to Russia is because we have learned the hard way that problems that develop beyond our borders sooner or later find their way to our doorstep unless we help our friends and our neighbors to deal with them as quickly and promptly as possible. Now, the Russian people are are to be commended for embracing democracy and getting rid of the old communist system. But they're having some troubles today making the transition from communism to a free market economy and from communism to a democratic society that has supports for people who are in trouble. What I want to do is to go there and tell them that the easy thing to do is not the right thing to do. The easy thing to do would be to try to go back the way they did it before, and it's not possible. But that if they will stay on the path of reform, to stabilize their society and to strengthen their economy and to get growth back, then I believe America and the rest of the Western nations with strong economies should help them, and indeed have an obligation to help them, and that it's in our interest to help them. And if you say why, let me just give you a couple of reasons. First of all, Russia and the United States still have the biggest nuclear arsenals in the world. And at a time when India and Pakistan have tested nuclear weapons, we need to be moving the world away from nuclear war, not toward it. We have to have the cooperation and the partnership of the Russians to do that. We don't want terrorists to get a hold of weapons of mass destruction. A weakened Russia, a weakened Russian economy would put enormous pressure on people who have those technologies and understandings to sell them. We don't want that to happen. We know we need Russia's partnership to solve problems in that part of the world. If it hadn't been for Russia's partnership, we could not have ended the war in Bosnia, which all of you remember just a couple of years ago was threatening the entire stability of Europe. Next door in Kosovo, there's a similar problem today. We've got to have Russia's partnership to solve that. So if Russia will stay on the path of reform, I believe America and the rest of the West must help them. I'm also going to Ireland, which is the homeland of over 40 million Americans. We trace our ancestry there. And they've been working a long time on a peace process in which we have been intimately involved, and I'm going to do my best to advance that. I think we have a good chance to do so. But I want you to understand that I do these things because I think they are in America's interest. They're not just the right things to do. They're not just nice things to have happen. But every child, you look around this room and see how many children are here who come from different cultures themselves, whose ancestors come from different countries themselves. There is no nation in the world better positioned than the United States to do well in the 21st century because we're a people from everywhere. If our values, if our values and our ideals can spread around the world, and we can create a peaceful, secure world. So that's what I'm trying to do. But to get back to the main point, the ultimate national security of any country rests in the strength of its own citizens. And for us, that means we have got to prove that no matter how diverse we are, we can still offer a world-class education to every single American child. And I'm sure all of you know this, but virtually everyone in the world believes that America has the finest system of higher education anywhere. We are flooded every year with students and graduate students coming from every other country in the world to our colleges and universities because they think they're the best in the world, and they have made us very strong. But we now know that in the world we're living in, it's not enough just to educate half the people very well through university. You must educate 100% of the people very well in elementary and secondary schools. And we know we've got a lot of challenges. Our kids come from different places. A lot of them have different cultures. They have different learning patterns. They speak different languages as their native languages. A lot of them are poor. A lot of them live in neighborhoods that are difficult. And so this is a great challenge for us, but it is a worthy challenge. It's a worthy challenge for a great country to prove that we can take all this diversity, not just racial and ethnic and religious diversity, but diversity of life circumstance, and still give every single child a shot at living his or her dreams. That is what this is all about, and that's why I'm here today. This is just as much a part of our national security as that trip I'm taking to Russia. And I want you to understand that I believe it. And when we finish the roundtable, I want to say a little about what we can do to help and what's going on in Congress and what will happen in Congress over the next month, because it's very important. But the most important thing, as the Secretary said, is what's happening here. So I'd like to stop talking and start listening now, and we'll do the roundtable. And I think we should start with Michelle Freeman and let her talk about this school and her experiences and her challenges and what she's doing about it.
Okay. Herndon Elementary School is a special place, and many of you that are seated out there in the audience already know that. I want to fill you in a little bit about the history of Herndon so that we have a context for some of the things that I will talk about this morning. Herndon Elementary School is a large school. It has always been a large school. For the past 13 to 14 years, we've always been over 1,000. And this year we will begin school with 1,033 kindergarten through 6th grade boys and girls. In the past 3 years, Herndon has had a dramatic change in the diversity of our population. We began 3 years ago with almost all middle class, non-minority students. We had about 80 to 86% non-minority students. But in 3 years' time, we are now at 49.9% in terms of minority students. Of the population of 1,033, 491 of those students are non-minority students. 232 of those students are Hispanic students. 131 of those students are African American. 132 are Asian. And then we have a few boys and girls who are American Indians. There are about 6 of those boys and girls. Now, in itself, that's wonderful. Diversity is a great thing. We have had so many different and new layers added to our school because of the richness that the diversity has brought to us. But we're also faced with many challenges because, as everyone knows, society nowadays has changed dramatically. The extended family is no longer a part of the family for most of our students. Grandma's not there to pick up the slack while mom and dad are working 2 and 3 jobs. Lots of families are in crisis in terms of what they're able to do and provide for their children. And as many of our parents come from some of our Central and South American countries to America, they came from that particular setting with lots of riches. But once they come to America and settle in, some of that money is no longer available to them. So they are beginning to acclimate to what's here in the United States, and sometimes that puts a family in crisis. We as a school have had to make many, many changes to face some of the challenges that diversity brings. In terms of the way we operate, we have had to become a full-service organization. And for a long time, we were able to, with volunteers helping us from outside of the school and in the school community and business partners, we've been able to pick up the slack. But now we are finding that we have to make those connections with the agencies that are out there in our community, with social services, and with many of the facilities that will help families to become stable so that we can begin the job of educating their youngsters. In addition to that, and this is something, Mr. President, that I'm very proud of, I have been lucky to have a staff who are completely dedicated and committed to doing what's best for children. And as a result of that, we have had many, many programs implemented to help students across the board. One example of that is our Excel program, which is a Saturday program talking about commitment and dedication. How many teachers do you know would give up a Saturday to come to our school to oversee a program that helps to raise student achievement? Not many. But we were pretty tricky in initiating this program because not only did we want to help students achieve, we also wanted to educate our parents. And through some of our counselors and parent coffees, we found out that there was a a large need for parents to have information about school systems themselves, how they're different from the school systems they came from, logistical kinds of information that would help them to support their children at home. So what we did was, while we have those parents here waiting for their children, our counselors will take them downstairs and they will run simultaneous groups in terms of parent education, as well as information meetings. We invite county folks to come in and to talk with parents about the various things that are happening around the county. So we really are keeping them here so they don't leave us on a Saturday and leave us with their children to babysit. But we're also making sure that we're giving them the information they need to help us out. And that is most important nowadays. Education is everybody's business. We have implemented many programs with ESL, many early intervention programs. Reading recovery is a major, major piece of our early primary program. Dedication and commitment kicks in again when you talk about first grade teachers who, as a team, went out to be trained in some of the beginning reading strategy courses so that they could come back and offer that wealth to all of their children in their classrooms. And that kind of dedication and commitment continues as teachers begin to come up with creative ways and creative configurations in classrooms to make sure that every child is successful. Looping, multi-age grouping, all of those kinds of things. I'm sorry, Doctor.
We're among friends.
Success by Aid, one of the programs and initiatives that Dr. Dan has brought with him, has really been a breath of fresh air for us because we have been doing that. We have been working with our boys and girls in the early grades to bring them up to steam so that by the time they reach the levels of 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, we hopefully have them to the place where they're able to achieve and move on. Well, Herndon is one of those places where you have to have that kind of dedication and commitment or you burn out. I don't want to present this lovely picture of this school where we are doing everything that we can to make ends meet and we don't need any help. Because we do need resources, we do need additional teachers. Space is at a premium in this building. We have teachers in closets. We will use every inch of the space in the building to provide a place for children to work, a place for children to be successful. Technology. We at this school have been blessed with a PTA who every year makes technology a priority. And through their help with raising funds, I don't know if you've heard of the Giant and Safeway initiatives, the PTA has worked very hard to make sure that every year we're adding computers to our classroom, we're getting the latest software. We haven't gotten into too much with telecommunications yet, but we hope to be moving in that direction. But we need equity somewhere in that whole mix to make sure that every school has the hardware and software and a network administrator, a person in the building, a body in the building, to make sure that all of those things are operating correctly. One last thing I'd like to mention, because I could go on and on and on, and it's a round table, not a me table. But I just, one more thing I'd like to mention, and this goes right back to the dedication and the commitment of the community here at Herndon. And that is not to say that my teachers are the only ones that are breaking their backs to make this work. Our parents who come in to volunteer, to work with us, We do have parents who have 3 and 4 jobs, but will collate receipts at home and do all kinds of things to make sure that they still have a foot in the door. We have business partners who have been gracious enough to donate materials, who have donated their time, who have donated money, but not enough, to help us with the things that we need to do.
Did you prepare her with
Mr. President, when you're talking about priorities and quality, those are 2 words that just resonate in my eardrums, because without having priorities, and I mean kids first, without having those priorities in that, going in that direction, and without having the quality in every school, not only in Virginia, but every school across America, it makes it very, very difficult for us to have our students prepared for the 21st century. So thank you for this time.
Good job.
You did a great job. Let me just say very briefly before I move on, you probably know this because you talked about how your school was growing, but I believe that Secretary Riley, I think it was last year, was the first year that we actually had a school class from kindergarten through high school bigger than the baby boom generation. And this explosion of children into our schools has created enormous strains on school districts all across America. I was in a school in Florida that I believe it had 17 trailers outside being used for classes.
Mr. President.
This is just one school, not a school district, and it was an amazing. But there was an article in the Washington Post and in other newspapers over the weekend about the teacher shortage in America, and I'm very concerned about it. We have 2 proposals. One is to put 35,000 teachers in the most difficult and underserved areas in the country. It's part of our budget. The other would put 100,000 teachers out there across the country in grades in the first 3 grades to try to keep class size down below 20. And I think those things are very, very important. So one of the things I'm hoping I can do is to persuade the Congress in the next month to embrace the idea that we clearly have a national obligation now to support what is a national phenomenon, the explosion of the number of school children in our schools. So when you said what you did, it made me want to think about that. I'd like to go on now to Joanne Shackelford because it seems to be a logical follow-up to what you said about the diversity of your student body and teaching people to read, and this Saturday program, which I'm very interested in. It sounds to me like something everybody ought to be doing.
Thank you. First of all, I want to tell you welcome to our school. We're so excited you're here. Ms. Freeman is a hard act to follow, so I won't try, but I do have a few things to ask for.
Well, mission.
Who picked this place?
Just a couple, I'll be quick. Our staff, most of which is seated in the first 3 rows out here, firmly believes that all of our students can learn to read by the end of 3rd grade, and they will then become lifetime learners, not only readers. But to achieve this goal, we are very convinced that we need smaller class sizes. And we also need intervention in the early grades before it's too late. We have 2 programs here at Herndon that I'm going to talk a little bit about. The first one is one I know you're familiar with from Arkansas, is the Reading Recovery Program. The Reading Recovery teachers, there are 2 of us, work very closely with the classroom teachers, which is the key to build a program for these students. And these are usually our lowest achieving 1st graders. And we build on their strengths, and we make them become not only good readers, but lifelong readers. And we have been very successful here with that program. It's really the highlight of my day when I come to work and I spend that 2 hours with my 4 reading recovery students and watch them learn to read. It's exciting. But because of our large size, here comes the asking part, and only 2 trained reading recovery students, we're not able to reach all of our students. We have a long waiting list of students that would like to be, that need that support. So we would like to see this program expanded in all of our schools across the nation. The second program is probably the dearest one to my heart, is our Excel Saturday program. We fondly call it here Saturday School. And if you came to our library and our cafeteria on any given Saturday, you would find about 90 of our students and about 60 to 70 students from Herndon High School and other area high schools who have actually gotten out of bed to come here. And the high school students serve not only as the tutors, but as the mentors and as the role models for our students. The teachers provide materials to help their academic skills, and we also try to encourage our English as second language students develop their English proficiency. We have 4 or 5 of our teachers every Saturday and 4 or 5 of the high school teachers here helping to provide guidance and encouragement for the program. So that is a large commitment from our staff and from Herndon High School. We feel like this is a winning program for everyone, not only for our students, but the high school students receive as much benefit as we do. One of the things that's fun to watch is they practice the languages that they're learning at the high school on our native speaking children and on our French immersion children. So they're practicing, and the children are the teachers. It also gives them a wonderful opportunity to give back to their community, which is so important. At the same time, Ms. Freeman talked a little bit about it, we capture the parents, and we're able to provide, discuss parenting issues, and in my role, we talk a lot about how important it is to read children, but not only in English, but in your own native language. So that has been very beneficial. We also translate the meetings into Spanish or any other language that is needed that Saturday. Now what we would like is, we would like to be able to expand this program to serve more students, provide transportation for some of our students that aren't able to get here. We haven't done that in the past. And scholarships for some of our high school tutors so that they can go on. Many of our high school tutors are English as second language students themselves who have gone through the elementary school and are now in the high school. So if we had more funds, we could do all of those things. Thank you.
I'd just like to make a couple of observations. First of all, I'll think about this high school scholarship thing. The only high school scholarships directly for service, community service we have, are the ones that I announced at Penn State a couple of years ago, where we give a modest scholarship that's matched in the local community to one person for outstanding community service in high schools. But we now have 1,000 colleges and universities providing reading volunteers through the America Reads program to go into schools to help young children learn to read. And most of them are work-study students, but a lot of them are not eligible for work-study and they just do it anyway. But there may be something we can do on that, and I'll think about it. The other thing I'd say is that I'm a big fan of the Reading Recovery Program. And if you look at the research, it has about the best long-term results of any strategy. But there's a reason for it. It's very expensive because it's so labor-intensive. And it's something that maybe Secretary Riley wants to talk about this a little bit. We've discussed before, that whether the generalized assistance we give to school districts for supportive programs like this, or to states, which then the school districts get, should be more focused. And we tried not to sort of pick and choose among the various reading strategies because of the limited amount of money and the large number of programs underway in the country. But there's no question that the reading recovery strategy, particularly when you've got a lot of young people whose first language is not English, has had, I believe, the best long-term results. But it's because it's so labor-intensive and it's quite expensive, and it's something we need to look at.
Thank you.
Dick, you want to say anything about that?
No, you said it correctly. The funds that we give out from the federal government, we really try to have them flexible enough for you to use them for programs of this kind, but that specific decision probably should be a local decision. But frankly, this reading by the end of the third grade, we think is probably as important as anything in this country. And if a child is having difficulties, this concentration through the reading recovery program just makes so much sense to meet that national goal.
Maybe we should go on now to, since we're talking about this subject, to Maria Gorski, who's a parent liaison, and you talked about involving the parents, so talk about a little about that for us, Maria.
Sure. Mr. President, welcome to Herndon Elementary once again. We are aware of your busy schedule and we appreciate your time here with us today. My concerns are about our children's parents who has 2 to 3 jobs and they don't have enough time to help with homework to their children because of the language barrier and the lack of time to have family unity. As a parent liaison, I had the opportunity to observe and learn how parents feel frustrated not being able to fully understand the language, help their children, and express their concerns about their children's education. Parents, from my own experience, have the willingness to learn the language and get better skills to have a better future. As you know, if they learn the language, better opportunities, they can find better jobs and spend more time with their children. They have requested programs for after school and weekend tutoring for the children as also for the parents, for themselves. Please support our existing United Neighborhood program, which is being run by Captain Smith of the Herndon Police from Herndon and the volunteers from our community. It's a tutoring program that runs three nights a week, 3 evenings a week, from 6 to 7:30, and the volunteers come and tutor the children. I've been there a few times, and the children, their grades improve a great deal. So far, it's been successful, but I said before, it's only runs with volunteers only. Please restore the funding, which will support programs like ours, and allow them to work better to make our community stronger. As you know, the future is realizing our children, and now is the time to think about them as well as for the parents. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. How many parents volunteer in the school?
Oh,
Or did it
boy.
say? Do you know how many?
We clock the volunteers by hours that they spend in the school, but I would say if you're looking roughly for a figure, we have anywhere during the course of the year from 500 to maybe more than that in terms of volunteers coming in and out of the building. We also have, if you add to that number, volunteers that work from home and send in materials or make things for us, so that we add those hours into the clocked hours for the year. So we have a large volunteer pool.
What about the children where both parents work and maybe have 2 jobs? How do you work out time for them to meet with the teachers? And
That's what we usually, sometimes on Saturdays, I do the translations for the Spanish parents and the conferences, sometimes in the evenings, in the mornings, early mornings. Sometimes, usually they have a day off, and I try to work it out to their own convenience, in their own schedule. It's very difficult, especially in November for the conferences. But last year we had a lot of them that they made the conference.
what about, how does the school work? What does the assistant principal do to make sure that there are no fires started and everybody sort of shows up more or less on time and all of that?
Well, life here at Herndon is very, very interesting. And Mr. President, despite recent events in the past year concerning discipline and safety in the schools, we at Herndon Elementary believe that schools should and need to be one of the safest places for our children. Our teachers and staff are dedicated to meeting the challenge of educating and nurturing every child that enters their classroom. And by being proactive, we have fostered the importance of building a sense of community within the classrooms and throughout the school. Our teachers have been trained in discipline with dignity strategies and teach the pillars of character education. They get to know the children, they get to know the families. In fact, many of them go to sporting events and dance recitals and take the kids to Oriole ball games. We really have a very dedicated staff. Our counselors work with the students to learn strategies to help themselves in peer mediation and conflict resolution. They too go out, they outreach into the community, into the homes. They run classes on parenting skills and also are a very integral part of the Excel program. The administration is very visible, and the reason we are very visible is because we need to know the tone of the day. We like to avoid problems, we like to be proactive, and also to get the sense of the emotional state of our children. So we are visible by greeting them every morning, by being in the cafeteria for breakfast and for lunchtime. We need, and we try to model and convey that we care for our children and we are there for them, so they know who they can go to for help. Our Go for the Gold program has really helped the children set expectations and accomplish their goals, and academically and socially. And also our parents, our business partnership, and our community has been a very integral part of the team by tutoring, by mentoring, and the numerous volunteer hours. Also, we have a very unique program here at Herndon called Adopt a Cop. And our local police come in and have lunch with the children. And we find that extremely beneficial because it has heightened the awareness of the children about safety in the school and within the community. So we are very, very proud of our staff and our community's proactive work in discipline and safety, because discipline and safety are important and are really some of the most challenging issues we are dealing with as educators today.
I think last week I went up to Worcester, Massachusetts, and released there this handbook that Secretary Riley and Attorney General Reno did for all the schools on trying to identify children that have problems and try to prevent things from happening before they go too far. But I tried to emphasize then that the schools are basically the safest places in the country for our kids. But when something goes wrong, it can be terrible and tragic. But I think it's important that the American people know that most schools have people like you in them and other people who are really working hard to do their part to help the children grow up in a safe, secure environment so they can learn. And I know Secretary Riley, you mentioned the character education program. He's been promoting that and worked hard for it ever since we've been here, and I thank him. What about the teachers?
We're
It's about
excited.
time we heard that.
We're excited, Mr. President. I know at this time of the year, we're all setting up our classrooms and wondering when those students are ready to come in and meet us. But we also are realistic and look at the challenges that each individual child will bring to our classroom. And also, we need to think about how do we communicate with the parents? How do we share our expectations, and how do we get them to work together with us as a team? It's hard enough for seasoned teachers to prepare, but for brand new teachers who are just entering the profession, in Fairfax County, we feel it's important to provide a mentor so they can have support and encouragement and maybe somebody just to listen to their stories and to give them what they need. We also provide a colleague teacher to anybody new to the county but who has taught before, because across the nations we do things a little bit differently. I think too we need to make sure that we can convince our middle school and high school students that teaching is a wonderful profession. We need to somehow reach out to them, show them our excitement. Maybe provide funding, so maybe a child who's afraid they can't afford college can be provided that. But then we also need to go one step further, and when they do choose education, make sure we're there as experienced teachers giving the support that a new teacher needs. I think across the board in our school, we try to have a really strong mentorship program. And I think it goes across our staff. If you can share with one another, it just keeps building. Because as teachers, we never stop learning, and we should never stop reaching out to help others.
What's the most challenging thing that new teachers face, first-year teachers?
I think it's that first conference, sometimes with the parent, or the first phone call, and you're not sure what the concern is from the parent, because you want to establish rapport immediately with the parent, because if you establish that rapport, the rest of the year is so much easier. And so we need to reach out to our parents and make sure they know that we're there to work with them. And we need to share that with the beginning teachers. Don't be afraid of parents. They're there to work with us. So let's be there for them.
I could use her in any number of positions. We got an airplane strike in the Midwest. I think you could settle for me by tonight, and I'd appreciate it.
Mr. President, she's taken.
Well, one of those parents is sitting to your left. Mr. Lewis, you're the PTA president. First of all, I know this is not what you are going to say, but what do you do when you're not the PTA president, and why did you decide to do this?
Mr. President, before I answer that question, and by way of beginning, we at Herndon Elementary, along with the chorus of voices across this nation, want to take this moment to commend you and your administration for your unwavering commitment to the notion of quality education for millions of school children in America. We ask you, Mr. President, to continue to press forward. Simply stated, Mr. President, we want to say that we appreciate you and thank you. Now, to answer your question specifically, my day job is with communities and schools, working with Bill Milligan. I know you know Bill Milligan. Yes. And of course, we are the largest stay-in-school program in the nation, and we're in over 1,000 schools across the country. We serve over 350 to 500,000 school children a year. I have a deep, burning passion to help children to achieve their capacity and potential, as well as everyone around this panel and those that occupy the audience today. My daughter, Christina Lewis, who is here with us today, is a student at Herndon Elementary School, and it seems to me that everyone has an incumbent obligation to contribute to their community in every way they possibly can, and that brought me to the PTA. And let me say very quickly that the PTA is composed of teachers and parents and administrators that are world-class in every way, and it makes my job very easy. I do want to say, Mr. President, that in your inaugural metaphor that you used to call the nation to action, that is building bridges to the 21st century. The PTA at Herndon Elementary School is about building bridges. It's about connecting the disconnected. It's about building a community context around the school and every student within the school. Secretary Riley has talked often about the fault lines in America, the emerging fault lines in America. And what we're about as a PTA is building bridges across those fault lines. Now, let me tell you how we do that, Mr. President. We build community around the school, around every student in the school, and we have something called guiding principles that inform our decision making. there are 10, and there are 10 guiding principles because someone came down off a mountain once with 10 principles. So we try to approximate that. Number one, we believe that within every child there's greatness. Number two, we believe that all children can learn. Number three, we believe that all children should be affirmed and validated. Number four, every child should feel safe, cared about, and capable. We call these four principles the principles that produce social capital, that every child can draw upon in order to realize their capacity, potential, hopes, and aspirations. Number five, we believe that effective schools should have a bias towards quality. That is, we should constantly examine whether or not we're providing value for our customers in terms of adequacy, relevancy, and effectiveness. Number six, we believe that effective schools should be learning organizations. That is, they should be open, responsive, and adaptable. Number seven, we believe strongly in parent involvement. The literature tells us and experience tells us that when parents are involved in schools, children succeed in school exponentially. Number eight, we believe that every child should have access to modern information technology, and that technology should be integrated into teaching and the curriculum. We believe that that is essential. Number nine, we believe that children in schools should be embraced by a community of collaborative partnerships that are needs-based focus. And number 10, Mr. President, we believe that every school and every school district should have a vision that is compelling, clear, and is consistent. We believe that these guiding principles, Mr. President, are imperative.
I would just like to say a couple of things and ask you one question. First of all, I want to thank you for your work with the Cities and Schools program. I brought it to Arkansas with Bill Milliken probably 15 years ago now, a long time ago. Secondly, I want to thank you for your work in the PTA, and as a father who used to be an active participant in all our school events, I think it's a good thing to have men as well as women be presidents.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing. And, I think that's good. How many members does your PTA have? How many parent members?
Last year, 47% of the parent population at Herndon Elementary School were members of the PTA. This year, under the able leadership of Mary Mann, who is our Vice President for membership, we expect to go to scale, 100%.
I'd say that's pretty good.
We think big here.
Well, Mr. Superintendent, are all your schools like this?
Oh, absolutely. Well, welcome, Mr. President, to Herndon Elementary and to the Fairfax County public school system. We are the 12th largest school system in America with 152,000 students, and undoubtedly we are the best school system in America.
All right, there you go.
Most diverse,
And clearly the reason for that, I think, is demonstrated around this table. This is a community that values education, that treasures education, where the parents, the business community, the staff just give 100% for all of our children. And in spite of our size, it's a quality school system. We are a microcosm of America. We have 39% of our students are minority students. But we don't see diversity as a weakness. We count diversity really as our strength. And we have instituted a number of programs, and I think you heard a sample of those programs here that have been very successful for us. Now, in spite of that, we want to continue excellence, and in order to do that, and in order to meet the challenge of the 21st century, because we very much agree with you. You know, the United States of America is the #1 power in this country, but we only have 5% of the world's population. And what that tells us is that there isn't a single child that we can afford to lose if we treasure the future of this country. The challenges that confront us, Mr. President, and the ones that we need assistance with is size. You mentioned before visiting a school in Florida. Well, the Secretary visited us this spring at Centerville, a high school, where we have over 40, we don't call them portables, we call them learning cottages. That's in just one school, and you'll see that represented around the county. We have a problem in terms of facilities. We need dollars to construct new schools. We need dollars to extend facilities. Herndon, you'll see a couple of learning cottages outside here as well. Technology, it's a major issue, a very important issue for us in education, but again, a big ticket item. We need help there. And definitely we need help in terms of class size. One of our initiatives for this coming school year is a program we call Success by 8. And that translates into that by the 8th grade, we expect all of our children, by the time they're 8 years old, by the 3rd grade, we expect all of our children to be able to read. We expect all of them to be on grade level in terms of math and any other studies. But in order to do that, we have to be able to create the kind of learning environment for them where the size is small enough that teachers can do the kind of job and the students can learn. So those are important issues that we face, and we as a school system are making ourselves highly accountable also to our public and to our community. And we're saying, this is what we expect to do, this is what we will do, hold us accountable, because in turn, we get this tremendous support from staff and community and business. So we're happy to have you here, and we certainly look forward to your assistance, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, let me say, I think this is a truly extraordinary school district. And I have done my part to promote you, around the country. I always talk about what an amazing school district this is. And some of your schools, particular schools, are as diverse as any in America. And stunning array of people coming from different places. So I'm very impressed, and I thank you for what you're doing. I wonder, Secretary Riley, would you like to say anything before I talk a little bit about the congressional agenda?
Let me say just a word, Mr. President, and then present you for some remarks. First of all, there was a mention made of your speech about the early warning signs. Those publications, the President charged the Attorney General and myself to come up, pulling in child psychologists and law enforcement people and teachers and all, and we're going to have that to you all within the next couple of days in all of your schools. So Dan will have them, and I think it'll be a big help. It's a child-centered guide. It's not to label children, but to help them, and I think you'll find it very, very helpful. And what a grand panel this has been. And
didn't they do a great job?
Just wonderful job. Yeah. I had the chance to read a very good book a couple of months ago. Some of you might have read it, Cold Mountain. And Charles Frazier, the author, could do as much with the English language as anybody I've read lately. And Ada Monroe, one of his lead characters in there, was making a statement about her father, who was deceased, who was a Methodist minister. I'm a Methodist also, and from Charleston, South Carolina, in the book, in the novel, and which in South Carolina is my home. Anyhow, associated with that, she said wonderful things about her father all through it, and he was a great community leader. And she said that he talked of ignorance and developed strategies for its defeat. A lot of people talk about education and ignorance. The important thing, I think, for all of us, though, is to come together on strategies for improving education. No one has done more to present practical, common sense strategies for improving education than our president. Whether it's standards, raising standards, improving teaching, making schools safer, all of the many strategies, many of which have been talked about today. Bill Clinton has worked tirelessly to meet these challenges, to prepare America for this information age. And he's not just talked about improving education, and he's not just talked about defeating ignorance. He has devised strategies to help make it a reality. It's a great pleasure for me, once again, to introduce to all of you in this wonderful audience, this grand panel, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
The way I was prepared for this, I was supposed to go up there at the podium and give a little talk, and it's way too past that. We've had too much fun. But what I would like to do is to outline to you, there are 6 things that the Congress should pass that are in my budget, that don't break the balanced budget, that are in our balanced budget, that they can pass or not pass in the next few days that I think would really help our children a lot. 5 of them bear directly on our schools, 1 indirectly, but I'd like to just mention them so you would know, because I would like to see them get broad bipartisan support. I don't really believe we're best served when education is a partisan issue. I think we're best served when it's an American issue that crosses party lines. So first of all, I have given Congress a plan for smaller classes, better trained teachers, and more modern schools. Let's begin with the teacher shortage. You know it's acute here. It is profound in many places. Now, let me say one other word of introduction. There has been what I consider to be a legitimate question raised of me by many members of Congress who say, well, now look, Mr. President, you're trying to get the federal government into financing things that the federal government has never before financed. We've never been into building or repairing schools, for example. There are many states in this country where the states don't even do that, where it all has to be done at the local level. Or putting 100,000 teachers out there for smaller classes in the early grades. My answer is as follows. Number 1, it's hard to think of a more important national issue. Number 2, I'm not doing anything to interfere with the local direction of the schools or the state's constitutional responsibility to set the framework of public education. And number 3, in some places like this district, the level of growth, and in other places, the level of poverty, make it simply inconceivable that they can achieve these objectives otherwise. So I think if we have the money, this is what we ought to do. But I want to prepare you in case any of you feel moved by the Spirit to call or write your congressman or your senator. There is a legitimate historic pattern here where they'll say, well, you know, that President Clinton's got a lot of energy, but he may have gone too far this time because the federal government's never done this. There's a reason we're doing it now. There's a reason we're doing it now. We have to prove that our elementary and secondary schools can be uniformly as excellent as our colleges and universities are and give all of our kids world-class education. And unless we do this, I am convinced there won't be the resources out there to get the job done. So let me say, first of all, the teacher shortage. I've asked Congress to pass a plan to help school districts hire 100,000 new teachers, all trained, tested, and certified by state education authorities, targeted to smaller classes in the early grades. Again, where all the research shows there are permanent gains if kids get the kind of individual attention they need in the early grades. I've also asked them to help me support better teacher training programs, not directed by Washington, those things that all of you know work, all educators know work, but there is not today, in my opinion, a sufficient commitment to helping teachers continue to improve their skills, upgrade their skills, work with other teachers, to have the time necessary to try to continue to improve, to avoid burnout under all the pressures that they're under. And I think, you know, when I go out and talk to educators, there's really a lot of support for increased investment in teacher training. So I hope that Congress will fully fund this class size reduction program. It would get us down to an average of 18 children per class, 1 through 3. Second problem is it's hard to have a small class without a classroom. Or what did you call them? Learning cottages? Learning cottages. That sounds like someplace you're sent when you misbehave. Learning cottage. But anyway, so I have also presented a plan to help to modernize or build new 5,000 schools. And next Tuesday, when I get back from my trip, the Secretary and I and others are going to hold school modernization days all across America to highlight our proposal, which would provide tax credits to build or modernize or rebuild 5,000 public schools. I have been to schools in this country where whole floors were closed because they were so old. But they're wonderful buildings. Structurally, no one could afford to build such buildings today because of the cost of construction. But if you go to an inner city school, for example, think of what message it gives a 7-year-old child to walk up the steps of a school where the paint's peeling off and the windows are broken. Think of the message you're sending to a child. You want to say, oh, every child is a treasure, all these things that your PTA president said. I believe every one of them. But sometimes the actions speak louder than words. If you can tell those children that, but if they have to keep walking up steps into broken down buildings, do they really think we believe it? In Philadelphia, the other day I was in Philadelphia in a school. The average school building, the average age of school buildings in Philadelphia is 65 years. That's the average age. Now, the good news is those structures, by and large, are magnificent. The bad news is a whole lot of them are in terrible shape, and I think it's a worthy investment. I think it's a worthy investment of our money. So, we want to give fast-growing districts like this one and districts with good structures but old run-down buildings the chance they need to go forward. So that's the first, more teachers for smaller classes and more classes. Second, we want to fully fund my plan to equip our nation's classrooms with computers and cutting-edge educational software and to train teachers to be there to make sure that the technology is properly used. I want to hook up every classroom and library in the entire country to the internet by the year 2000 and make sure that the software is good and that the teachers are trained to make the most of it. And we have to help you do that. You shouldn't have to fully fund that yourself. And third, I want to strengthen the charter school movement. There are some school districts that have been greatly advanced by letting teachers and others get together and start new schools within the framework of the school district where the whole district's not reforming, but they want to try something new. We've got now about almost 1,000 of those schools out there. When I became president, there was only one in the whole country. When I was talking about 1992, I might have been trying to explain the theory of relativity. No, but everybody thought I was nuts. But now, first we had one, now we got nearly 1,000, and if my budget passes, we'll have 3,000 funded by the year 2000. Fourth, I want to continue to open the doors of college to all Americans who will work for it by reauthorizing the Higher Education Act. Now that doesn't mean anything, so let me tell you what that means, that reauthorization. This legislation will help more children reach their potential by improving teacher education. It will help struggling communities to hire 35,000 well-qualified teachers. It will expand mentoring programs, something that you've already said is important to you. It will reduce interest rates on student loans. It will extend Pell Grants and the federal work-study program. We've taken it from 700,000 work-study positions to 1 million in 3 years. So these things are very important. You know, we have provided for lower interest rates on student loans, better repayment, 300,000 more work-study slots, and now tax credits worth about $1,500 a year for the first 2 years of college, and then for junior and senior year in graduate school. I am determined that when I leave office, no American will ever walk away from college because of the cost. We can open the doors of college to everybody who is qualified, and it's important. Fifth, let's go back to what we were talking about on reading. We want to pass a bipartisan early literacy bill to help to train teachers and mobilize an army of volunteer tutors. As I said, we already have 1,000 colleges participating in this program, and I think it's very, very important. Sixth, we have a general program to strengthen our schools that would expand Head Start, strengthen after-school programs for hundreds of thousands of children. This is a huge deal in areas with a lot of juvenile crime, with a lot of dangerous streets, with a lot of gangs. These after-school programs and summer school programs have dramatically reduced student problems while increasing student achievements. And I think that's very, very important. We have a special initiative aimed at Hispanic young people because the school dropout rate is still much higher for Hispanics than for any other group, largely because of language barriers and economic problems. And we also have in this package program I just mentioned our Safe and Drug-Free Schools program. We're trying to take the initiatives that we know work in schools like this one and make sure they are in every single school in America. Now, the bill that the House Republican majority has proposed falls short of these goals in every single one of these areas. But it's not too late. The bill has to be considered in the Senate, then both the Senate and the House must vote on it. So I would implore you, without regard to your political party, just to contact your members of Congress, your senators, and ask them to support this agenda. We have the money. We have worked hard to balance the budget. We have worked hard to show fiscal discipline, to get the economy going again. There is no more important area in which to spend the money now that we have it. And so I hope you will help us to do that. Let me just say one final thing. The Senate tomorrow takes up the summer jobs program. Now that's not for this summer, but the one we just passed, but for the summer about to come. It provides more than 500,000 young people a chance to work. It is a godsend to this country. And because of the funding, federal funded summer jobs program, we have a lot of places which are able then to go out and get other people to put up money to expand the program. For reasons I do not understand, the House committee wants to disband it. And I think it would be a disastrous error. It comes up in the Senate tomorrow. And again, this is fundamentally an education issue because if kids get in trouble over the summer, they don't have problems, or they have problems, they don't have something to do, or if they need the money and they can't earn it, it increases the chances that they'll drop out. So I hope that you will also support the summer jobs program. The Senate is taking it up quite soon. I believe the Senate, across party lines, will vote to extend it, but we need help. So I just wanted to close by trying to close the circle here. We started in this roundtable talking about what you were doing to give the children in your charge the future they deserve and the future America desperately needs for them to have. But we think we have a role here if we're going to build those bridges to the 21st century. And I've done my best to define that role based on 20 years now of working with people in education. I think it's a good agenda. Secretary Riley and I ourselves started working together almost 20 years ago on public education. I guess next year will be our 20th anniversary of working together on these things when we were young governors. And I know that you know that there are things we should do. And I believe if we don't be harsh and political in our rhetoric, but talk about our children and what we know to be true of education, we can get a listening ear among enough thoughtful Republicans to join our Democrats to build a bipartisan coalition to do what the national government should do to help make possible more stories like the ones we've heard around this table today. That is my whole goal. And I know that we won't have all the stories we need unless we also do our part. So I ask you, whatever you can do to contact your representatives and senators, whatever you can do to make it clear that these are not partisan issues, these are people issues, and that our future is riding on it. If you can do that, I would be very grateful. And thank you for what you do here every day. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I may sit in on the class someday. I can use some of that. Thank you.